Today we are talking about the Wild Roses tattoo design. Welcome back. You might recognize this tattoo design from the Understanding Flow video, but this video is dedicated entirely to this one design. So sit back, relax, and watch as we show you exactly how we designed this one piece, and hit subscribe before we get started. Our client would like a tattoo of wild roses, along with stems, leaves, and rosebuds, and these would all flow across her side, starting from her front and then ending towards her back shoulder blade. And since the design covers such a huge area, I decided to create two focal points. The rib cage provides a solid structure, so the main focus on the side will be over the ribs, and on the back, I'm gonna aim to have most of the focus on the shoulder blade. Based on early sketches I made with this client, the tattoo will flow from the front to the back and maybe branch off in a few areas, like this. But there's many different ways this design could flow, and it's worth trying out a few different ideas. These flow lines change depending on where the design starts from, whether that's from the front or the back. And when it comes to flow, it's all about having a quick way to experiment and try out ideas. But in the end, I usually go with a fairly simple flow pattern that's easy to see from a distance. Sometimes, if a tattoo design has a very unique flow pattern, I open up a human model in Blender, and there I'm able to paint right on top of it. And this is perfect for experimenting with different flow lines and then being able to see those lines from different angles. You can even extend the flow lines to other areas to create a plan for future tattoos. I then change the arrows into stems for the roses, and I then add a location for each rose and rosebud, while keeping the ribs and the shoulder blade as the most detailed areas. And after taking a bunch of screenshots and merging them together, we're left with a rough shape that will be really helpful when we go to create the rough composition. Now let's take a look at some research for this design. First, we gather lots of pictures of roses. It would be nice if our roses had an interesting outside shape and a consistent light source. But a huge part of this design will be all the things that surround the rose, like the leaves, stems, and rosebuds. These are wild roses after all, and a wild rose would look pretty empty with nothing surrounding it. It's also important to research the anatomy of a rose, and to maybe have the stems branch out in the correct way. As usual, our client has sent us a bunch of images to help explain what they're looking for, so we'll keep these here if we need to reference them later. To get even more ideas, I generate these long images of roses, and you can start to see how the roses can flow in certain ways, and also how they look when there's a strong light source. Some of these shadows look pretty good. And these images further help me get a feel for all the things I can add to the design to add detail and variety. And since we're adding so many different parts of the rose, it's important to find some anatomy diagrams of these different parts. The final part of our research is to generate a large range of different elements to add to our design, making sure that there's a lot of sizes and variety. The most important part though is the fact that all these parts share the same light source. Then it's just a matter of adding these elements over the stem to create the rough composition. I then go in with my tablet and paint in the areas connecting the roses, and I'm moving fairly quickly and keeping things rough because I'll be doing my final detail pass on paper. And before we do that, I'm just doing a quick check to see how things are looking. To make the final artwork, we'll be using a process called overdrawing. First, we make a new project the size of a sheet of paper and then paste in a rough composition, and then lower the opacity down to about 10%. I then print out these 3 different sections all at the same scale. The idea is to draw right on top of these prints. That way we have all the proportions from the rough composition, but we can make our final choices on paper. While we are drawing, we're using 3 pencils. The first outlines were done with a mechanical pencil, then a hard lead for the first shading, and then a soft lead for the darkest areas. And we're working from top to bottom and finishing off each section before moving on to the next. That way we don't smudge the graphite on the paper as we work. I don't need to worry about the first outline in the mechanical pencil though. Those lines are very thin and they tend not to smudge very much. I usually finish off a section with my darkest pencil, and this pencil is quite versatile and can be used as a liner or a shader. So finishing up each section goes quickly since it's all done with one tool. And as we're moving through and completing one section at a time, we're using the eraser every now and then to clean up the negative space. One thing that is helpful is knowing that once this artwork is done, we're able to make changes to it once it's back in the computer. For example, we can repaint entire sections with the tablet, or we can reshape areas with the liquify tool. Back in the 2000s, I had very few ways to make changes to my final artwork, and having tools like transform and liquify in the computer allows us to make small changes to the artwork so we can get a perfect fit for the client on the day. Back when I started tattooing, we would do a lot of work with pens and draw right on the skin before tattooing in order to make some of these changes. And we still do a bit of that, but a lot less nowadays, and I'm grateful for that. And I should mention that if you're using design software, it really doesn't matter if you're using Photoshop or Procreate or anything else. All these programs basically work the same, each with their own slight variations, so you can feel good about just using the one that suits you best. And to all the viewers who prefer not to use a lot of technology when you're designing your tattoos, I salute you, and I agree that all this technology is definitely not required to make a great tattoo. As I'm working on this artwork, I'm reminded that many tattoo artists prefer to work from a rough composition, and creating a hand drawing of the final artwork might seem sort of redundant. A rough composition has more than enough information in it for a tattoo artist to make their final choices on skin while they're tattooing. I'm not sure why, but I began to move my designs back and forth from the computer to paper. But I find that my clients are much more inspired and committed to their design when they have a physical piece of artwork to hold and look at. And this is especially true when designing very large tattoos. I can definitely remember when growing up, going into tattoo shops and seeing these huge drawings on tracing paper hanging on the walls. And these were always very inspiring to look at. But it's important to note that this drawing step is really not required to make a great tattoo. Maybe you prefer to work straight from the tablet or the computer. In my experience, there's no one best way to design artwork for tattoos, so do whichever feels best for you. And with that, we're done our drawings. To get it back into the computer, we just scan our drawings at 600 dpi, and if you don't have a scanner, you can just take a picture with your phone. Here I'm using my tablet and painting a few details, and I'm using the liquify tool to move around a few areas. And everything I'm doing here can be done in Procreate or Photoshop. And after a little bit of work, it's time to stitch our 3 drawings into one. And this process was pretty easy since I made each of the 3 drawings at the same scale. And if you're curious, when I talk about making choices on paper, here you can see our rough composition with very little detail compared to our final drawing. At this stage, I really want to see the artwork on top of our blank. To help visualize things, I modify the drawing slightly so it looks a little more like a tattoo. And most importantly, the design has a nice flow, moving from the front to the back with most of the detail over the rib cage. And as the design moves towards the back, there's a nice flow with most of the detail over the shoulder blade. And we have tools like Transform and Liquify that will help us fit this very complex design onto the very specific shape of our client's body when we go to create the final stencil for tattooing. But as a last minute idea, I remembered that there was some interesting light and shadow in some of the reference images. And before I show the client their artwork in their next consultation, I decided to quickly add a rough shadow. Now the final shadow would be different than this one, but this helps give us a rough idea and will help the client decide if they want something like this in their final artwork. And with that done, I prepare a presentation for my client to help explain things during the next consultation. And that is the first draft of the Wild Roses tattoo design. Hey, if you got anything out of this, then help us out by hitting the like button. And subscribe to our channel, we come out with new videos often. And make sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. And if you're serious about creating the best art possible for your tattoos, then go to tattoodesignschool.com and check out the masterclass. This is everything I wish I knew when I was first starting out, and it will push you to create artwork you didn't think was possible. This is the perfect investment in your tattoo career, so check out the masterclass at tattoodesignschool.com. But most importantly, share this video with the person you know who's interested in artwork and tattoos. And we'll see you in the next one.